Marcus Chen adjusted his prosthetic leg as he walked through the gleaming corridors of the Galactic Diplomatic Station. The metal and carbon fiber replacement clicked softly against the polished floor with each step. After losing his leg in the Battle of Proxima, he never thought he would find himself working as a maintenance engineer on a space station filled with dozens of alien species. The station hummed with activity. Tall, blue-skinned Zenthari glided past him with their flowing robes, while the insect-like Vrex chittered in their clicking language. Marcus had learned to recognize most of the major species during his 2 years working here, but he still felt like an outsider among the galactic community. His comm device buzzed. "Chen, we need you in Sector 7. "The atmospheric controls are acting up again," came the voice of his supervisor, Janet. "On my way," Marcus replied, grabbing his toolkit from a nearby maintenance panel. Sector 7 housed the diplomatic quarters for visiting dignitaries. As Marcus made his way through the luxurious corridors, he noticed the decorations were different from the standard station decor. Holographic displays showed swirling patterns of light, and the air carried a faint scent of something like cinnamon. He found the malfunctioning atmospheric control unit in a side corridor. As he knelt down and opened his toolkit, he heard a soft sound that made him pause. It was rhythmic tapping, like someone drumming their fingers, but there was something desperate about the rhythm. Following the sound, Marcus turned a corner and saw a small figure sitting on a bench near a large viewport showing the stars. It was a young Zenthari, maybe 8 or 9 years old in human terms. Her blue skin had a silvery sheen that marked her as nobility among her people. She was tapping complex patterns on the armrest of the bench, her large purple eyes fixed on the stars outside. Marcus had seen many Zenthari during his time on the station, but something about this child struck him as different. Her tapping wasn't random, it had structure, like she was trying to communicate something. "Hello there," Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle her. The young Zenthari didn't respond. She continued tapping, her patterns becoming more urgent. Marcus moved closer and noticed she wasn't just tapping randomly. The patterns reminded him of something from his military days. During the war, when communication systems failed, soldiers used tactical hand signals and coded tapping to communicate silently. This child was doing something similar, but more complex. "Are you trying to tell me something?" Marcus asked, moving into her line of sight. The young Zenthari looked up at him with those large purple eyes. She pointed to her ears and shook her head, then continued tapping on the armrest. Her expression was frustrated, like she had been trying to communicate for a long time without success. Marcus realized she might be deaf. Among humans, deaf individuals often developed heightened sensitivity to vibrations and visual cues. Perhaps this child was experiencing something similar. "My name is Marcus," he said, speaking slowly and clearly while pointing to himself. Then he pointed to her with a questioning expression. She seemed to understand, and pointed to herself, then made a flowing gesture with her hands that reminded Marcus of water or wind. When he looked confused, she repeated the gesture more slowly. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the corridor. "Lyralai, Lyralai, where are you?" The child looked toward the sound with recognition, but no apparent hearing of it. A moment later, a tall Zenthari in elaborate diplomatic robes rushed around the corner. When he saw Marcus near his daughter, his expression shifted to wariness. "Step away from her, human," the diplomat said in accented galactic standard. "She is under my protection." Marcus raised his hands peacefully and backed away. "I was just trying to help." She seemed like she was trying to communicate something. The diplomat's expression softened slightly as he approached his daughter. He knelt beside her and began making graceful hand gestures. The child responded with her own hand movements, but Marcus could see frustration in her gestures. "Forgive my suspicion," the diplomat said to Marcus while still signing to his daughter. "I am Ambassador Theron of the Zenthari High Council. This is my daughter, Lyra. She has been deaf since birth, and we are here seeking medical assistance from the Galactic Medical Consortium. I'm Marcus Chen, maintenance staff, Marcus replied. I noticed she was tapping in patterns. It reminded me of communication codes we used in the military. Ambassador Theron looked surprised. You recognized her attempts at communication. Most beings dismiss her tapping as nervous behavior. Pattern recognition was part of my training as a soldier, Marcus explained. Different species, different communication methods, but patterns are universal. Lyra tugged on her father's robes and began signing rapidly. Ambassador Theron's expression grew troubled as he watched her hands. What is she saying? Marcus asked. She says she can feel vibrations in her head, like something is moving inside. She has been trying to tell the medical staff, but they cannot find anything wrong with her auditory organs. They believe it is psychological. Marcus frowned. During his time as a combat medic before losing his leg, he had seen similar cases. Sometimes foreign objects or parasites could cause symptoms that standard medical scans missed, especially if they were small or made of organic material. Has anyone done a deep tissue scan with quantum resonance imaging? Marcus asked. Ambassador Theron looked surprised that a maintenance worker would know medical terminology. The medical staff performed standard scans. They found no abnormalities in her auditory system. Standard scans might miss something small or organic, Marcus said. In the war, we sometimes dealt with microparasites that could only be detected with specialized equipment. They could cause all kinds of neurological symptoms. The ambassador's purple eyes widened. You think there might be a parasite? I think it's worth investigating, Marcus said. If she's feeling movement, there might actually be something moving. Lyra looked between her father and Marcus, clearly sensing the importance of their conversation. She began tapping again, this time pointing to her head and making a face of discomfort. She says the movement is getting stronger, Ambassador Theron translated, his voice filled with worry. Marcus made a decision. I know someone who might be able to help. Dr. Sarah Kim in the medical bay has access to quantum resonance equipment. She's human, like me, and she understands that sometimes you have to think outside the box. Why would you help us? Ambassador Theron asked. Your people and mine have had limited contact. Marcus looked at Lyra, who was watching him with hopeful eyes despite not hearing the conversation. Because she's a kid who needs help, and I might be able to provide it. Species doesn't matter when someone is suffering. Ambassador Theron was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus's face. Finally, he nodded. Very well. Can you arrange a meeting with this doctor? I can try, Marcus said. But I should warn you, Dr. Kim doesn't always follow standard protocols. If there is something in there, she might want to try experimental procedures to remove it. Anything is better than watching my daughter suffer, Ambassador Theron said firmly. Marcus pulled out his comm device and contacted Dr. Kim. After explaining the situation, she agreed to see them immediately in her private lab, away from the standard medical facilities where other doctors might interfere. As they walked through the station toward Dr. Kim's lab, Marcus noticed how Lyra stayed close to his side. Despite not being able to hear him, she seemed to trust him. Every few steps, she would tap a pattern on her father's arm and point to Marcus. She wants to know why you walk differently, Ambassador Theron translated. Marcus looked down at his prosthetic leg and then at Lyra. He knelt down so they were at eye level and pointed to his leg, then made a gesture like an explosion. He pointed to himself and made a sad face, then pointed to his leg again and made a gesture like something being replaced. Lyra's eyes widened with understanding. She pointed to her ears and made a similar sad face, then pointed to Marcus's leg and made a questioning gesture. She's asking if your leg can be fixed like her ears might be fixed, Ambassador Theron translated, his voice soft with emotion. Marcus nodded and gave her an encouraging smile. He pointed to his leg, made a gesture like it was working, then pointed to her ears and made the same gesture. Lyralay smiled for the first time since Marcus had met her. It was a beautiful smile that lit up her silver-blue features. Dr. Kim's lab was tucked away in a section of the medical bay reserved for experimental research. She was a small woman with kind eyes behind thick glasses, and she greeted them warmly despite the unusual circumstances. "So, tell me exactly what's been happening," Dr. Kim said as she led them to her quantum resonance scanner. Ambassador Theron explained Lyralay's symptoms while the young Zenthari explored the lab with curious eyes. Marcus noticed she was particularly fascinated by the vibrating equipment, holding her hands near the machines as if feeling their energy. "Interesting," Dr. Kim murmured as she prepared the scanner. "The quantum resonance imager can detect organic matter at the cellular level. If there's something foreign in her auditory system, we'll find it." As Dr. Kim positioned Lyralay for the scan, Marcus watched the child's brave face. She couldn't hear the explanation of what was happening, but she seemed to understand that these people were trying to help her. The scanner hummed to life, filling the room with a low vibration that Marcus could feel in his bones. Lyralay's eyes widened, and she began tapping excitedly on the examination table. "She can feel the scanner," Ambassador Theron said, watching his daughter's reaction. Dr. Kim frowned as she studied the readouts. "That's odd. There's definitely something here, but it's not showing up clearly on the standard frequencies." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "It's like there's something that's partially phased out of normal space," Dr. Kim explained. "I need to adjust the quantum frequency." She made several adjustments to the scanner, and suddenly the image on her screen became clear. Everyone in the room fell silent as they stared at the display. There, nestled deep within Lyralay's inner ear, was a small, writhing creature that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in some other dimension. It was about the size of a rice grain, but it pulsed with an energy that made the scanner's readings fluctuate wildly. "What is that thing?" Ambassador Theron whispered, his voice filled with horror. Dr. Kim's face was grave as she studied the readings. "I've never seen anything like it. It appears to be a parasitic organism, but it exists in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. That's why standard scans couldn't detect it." Marcus leaned closer to the screen. "Could it be some kind of interdimensional parasite?" "That would explain why she can hear it moving but can't hear normal sounds," Dr. Kim said thoughtfully. "This creature might be interfering with her auditory system by existing partially outside our normal dimensional space." Lyralay, who had been watching their faces, began tapping urgently on the table. The patterns were more complex than before, almost frantic. "She says the movement is getting stronger," Ambassador Theron translated, his voice shaking. "She says it feels like it's trying to dig deeper." Dr. Kim immediately began scanning different angles. "We need to remove this thing immediately. If it burrows deeper into her brainstem, it could cause permanent neurological damage or worse." "Can you remove it?" Marcus asked. Dr. Kim was quiet for a long moment, studying the creature's position and the dimensional readings. "This is unlike anything in medical literature. Standard surgical techniques won't work on something that exists in multiple dimensions. We need to find a way to force it completely into our dimensional space before we can extract it." "How do we do that?" Ambassador Theron asked desperately. Marcus studied the readings, his military training kicking in. During the war, he had encountered weapons that used dimensional phase technology. "What if we could create a dimensional anchor field? Something that would force the creature to exist completely in normal space?" Dr. Kim looked at him with surprise. "That's actually theoretically possible, but we would need equipment that doesn't exist in this medical facility." "What kind of equipment?" Marcus asked. "A quantum field generator capable of creating a localized dimensional anchor. The only place on this station that might have something like that would be the physics research lab. Marcus nodded. I know someone there. Professor Zhang has been working on dimensional research for the past year. I've done maintenance on his equipment. Could he help us? Ambassador Theron asked hopefully. I'll find out, Marcus said, already reaching for his comm device. As Marcus made the call, Lyrelei suddenly grabbed her father's arm and began signing rapidly. Her face was pale, and she looked scared. What is she saying? Dr. Kim asked. Ambassador Theron's face went white as he translated. She says the thing in her head is getting angry. She says it knows we found it. The scanner suddenly erupted with activity as the readings went wild. On the screen, they could see the creature moving more violently, and it appeared to be growing larger. It's responding to our scans, Dr. Kim said urgently. We need to get that equipment now, or this thing might burrow so deep we'll never be able to remove it safely. Marcus finished his call and turned to the group. Professor Zhang is on his way with a portable dimensional anchor, but he says we'll only have one chance. The field generator can only maintain a stable anchor for a few minutes before it overheats. Then we'll have to make those minutes count, Dr. Kim said grimly. As they waited for Professor Zhang to arrive, Marcus sat beside Lyrelei and tried to keep her calm. He showed her pictures on his tablet of Earth, pointing out similarities between human and Xanthari children playing together. Despite her fear, she seemed fascinated by the images. When she tapped a question to her father, Ambassador Theron smiled sadly before translating. She wants to know if human children ever feel scared and alone like she does. Marcus nodded and pulled up a picture from his military service. A group of human soldiers caring for alien refugee children during the war. He pointed to himself in the picture, then to one of the frightened alien children, then made a gesture that showed them becoming friends. Lyrelei studied the picture for a long moment, then looked at Marcus with understanding in her large purple eyes. She tapped a simple pattern on his hand, 3 short taps, 2 long ones, then 3 short taps again. What did she say? Marcus asked. Ambassador Theron's voice was soft with emotion. She said, "Thank you for caring about me even though I'm different." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He took Lyrelei's small blue hand in his and tapped back the same pattern, hoping she would understand that the feeling was mutual. The lab door opened, and Professor Zhang entered carrying a device that looked like a metallic briefcase. Behind him came 2 assistants wheeling in additional equipment. I've never attempted to use a dimensional anchor on a living being, Professor Zhang said as he began setting up the equipment. The energy fields involved could be dangerous. More dangerous than leaving that thing in her head? Marcus asked. Professor Zhang looked at the scanner readings and whistled softly. Point taken. This creature is definitely not from our dimensional space. Where did it come from? That's a question for later, Dr. Kim said urgently. Can you create an anchor field small enough to target just the creature without affecting Lyrelei? I'll need to calibrate the field generator to her specific biosignature, Professor Zhang replied, already working on his equipment. This will take a few minutes. As Professor Zhang worked, the creature on the scanner became more agitated. It began to pulse with a strange energy that made all the equipment in the lab flicker. It's trying to phase shift completely out of our dimension, Dr. Kim observed. If it succeeds, we'll lose it forever, and Lyrelei will be left with permanent damage. Marcus watched Lyrelei's face as she endured the creature's increasingly violent movements. Her brave facade was cracking, and tears rolled down her silver-blue cheeks. How much longer? Marcus asked Professor Zhang. Almost ready, the professor replied, sweat beading on his forehead. The calibration is extremely delicate. Suddenly, Lyrelei let out a silent scream, her mouth open in obvious agony. The scanner showed the creature had grown to twice its original size and was pushing deeper into her brain tissue. We're out of time, Dr. Kim announced. Professor, we need that field now. Professor Zhang's hands flew over his controls. Field generator online. I'm creating a localized anchor. Now! The air in the lab seemed to shimmer, and every piece of electronic equipment hummed with harmonic resonance. On the scanner, the creature suddenly appeared solid and completely visible for the first time. I can see it clearly now, Dr. Kim said, grabbing her surgical instruments. But I'll need to work fast. How long can you maintain the field? 4 minutes? Maybe 5 if I push the generator beyond safe parameters, Professor Zhang replied. Dr. Kim looked at Marcus. I'm going to need assistance. Are you up for some emergency surgery? Marcus nodded without hesitation. Tell me what to do. As Dr. Kim prepared for the most unusual surgery of her career, Lorelei looked up at Marcus with complete trust in her eyes. She tapped a pattern on his hand. This time it was longer and more complex than before. Ambassador Theron translated, his voice filled with pride. She says, I'm not afraid anymore because humans keep their promises. Marcus squeezed her hand gently and tapped back a simple response. When she looked at her father for translation, Ambassador Theron smiled. He promised he won't let anything happen to you. Dr. Kim positioned her instruments as the dimensional anchor field held the creature in normal space. Beginning extraction procedure. Marcus, I need you to monitor her vital signs and keep her calm. As the delicate surgery began, Marcus held Lorelei's hand and watched her brave young face. He had faced enemy fire, lost his leg in battle, and survived the worst humanity's wars had to offer. But he had never felt pressure like this. The responsibility for this child's future rested in the steady hands of Dr. Kim, and the hope that human ingenuity could solve a problem that had stumped the entire Galactic Medical Consortium. The creature fought against the surgical instruments, writhing and pulsing with interdimensional energy. But trapped in normal space by the anchor field, it could no longer phase away from Dr. Kim's precise movements. Got it, Dr. Kim announced, as she carefully extracted the creature with specialized forceps. The moment it was free from Lorelei's ear, Professor Zhang activated a containment field that trapped the organism in a stasis chamber. Lorelei's eyes suddenly went wide, and she sat up on the examination table. For the first time in her life, she heard the hum of the medical equipment, the voices of the people around her, and the gentle sound of her own breathing. She turned to her father and spoke her first word aloud. Papa. Ambassador Theron wept openly as he heard his daughter's voice for the first time. Lorelei looked around in wonder at all the sounds she had never experienced before, then turned to Marcus with tears of joy in her purple eyes. Thank you, she said in heavily accented Galactic Standard, the words awkward but clear. Marcus smiled and squeezed her hand. You're welcome, Lorelei. Welcome to the world of sound. 3 days after the successful extraction of the interdimensional parasite from Lorelei's ear, Marcus found himself in a situation he never could have imagined. Ambassador Theron had requested a private meeting, and now Marcus sat in the luxurious diplomatic quarters, sipping what the Zenthari called harmony tea, while Lorelei played nearby, delighting in every sound she could hear. Mr. Chen, Ambassador Theron began, his melodious voice carrying a weight of formality. What you did for my daughter goes beyond simple medical assistance. You saved her life and gave her a future she never could have had. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in the elaborate chair. I just happened to notice the patterns in her tapping. Anyone with military training might have done the same. No, Ambassador Theron said firmly. I have worked with many species throughout my diplomatic career. Very few beings would have taken the time to understand a disabled child from an alien race, especially when that child belonged to a species they barely knew. Lorelei looked up from the sound-making toys her father had given her and walked over to Marcus. She had been practicing speaking for the past 3 days, and while her words were still awkward, her determination was remarkable. "Marcus," she said carefully, "Papa wants to ask you something important." Ambassador Theron smiled at his daughter's progress before turning serious again. "Indeed, the creature we extracted from Lyralai is unlike anything the Galactic Medical Consortium has ever encountered. Dr. Kim and Professor Zhang have been studying it with a team of specialists, and their findings are disturbing." Marcus leaned forward. "Disturbing how?" "The creature appears to be artificially created, not naturally evolved. Its dimensional phasing ability and its specific targeting of auditory systems suggest it was designed as some form of biological weapon," Ambassador Theron explained. "A weapon?" Marcus frowned. "But why target a child's hearing? That's what we're trying to understand. The creature's DNA structure contains markers that suggest it was specifically engineered to target Zenthari physiology. Lyralai may not have been a random victim." The implications hit Marcus like a cold wave. "Someone deliberately infected her with this thing." "We believe so. And if that's the case, Lyralai may not be the only victim. There could be other Zenthari children suffering from similar parasites, dismissed by doctors as having psychological hearing problems." Lyralai tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "What's wrong? Your face looks sad." Marcus managed a smile for her benefit. "We're just talking about grown-up things. Why don't you show me how well you can hear that music box again?" As Lyralai went back to her toys, Ambassador Theron continued in a lower voice. "The Zenthari High Council has asked me to extend an invitation to you. We would like you to come to our homeworld as a special advisor to help investigate this potential biological attack." Marcus nearly spilled his tea. "Me? I'm just a maintenance engineer. You're the human who recognized something that an entire medical consortium missed. You have military experience, pattern recognition skills, and most importantly, you understand how to think outside established protocols," Ambassador Theron explained. "The High Council believes human perspective might be crucial in solving this mystery." "What about my job here on the station?" "The station administrator has already agreed to grant you extended leave for this diplomatic mission. Apparently, news of what you did for Lyralai has reached some very high levels in the Galactic Administration." Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching Lyralai as she held a small chime near her ear, marveling at the delicate sound it made. "What would this investigation involve?" "We would travel to Zephyria, the Zenthari homeworld, where you would work with our top medical researchers and security specialists. We need to determine how many children have been affected, who is responsible for creating these parasites, and most importantly, how to prevent future attacks." Before Marcus could respond, his comm device buzzed urgently. It was Dr. Kim's emergency signal. "I need to take this," Marcus said, activating the communication. Dr. Kim's face appeared on the small screen, and she looked deeply troubled. "Marcus, we have a problem. The parasite we extracted from Lyralai wasn't just one organism. It was a breeding host." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, his blood running cold. "When we contained it, the creature began reproducing rapidly. It's created dozens of offspring, all with the same dimensional phasing abilities. Professor Zhang's containment field is the only thing keeping them from escaping." Ambassador Theron moved closer to hear the conversation. "Dr. Kim, this is Ambassador Theron. Are you saying the parasite could have reproduced while inside my daughter?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. We've detected trace genetic markers in Lyralai's bloodstream that suggest she was exposed to reproductive enzymes. If the extraction had been delayed by even another day or two, she could have become a walking incubator for these creatures." Marcus felt sick. How many offspring could one parasite produce? Based on what we're seeing in containment, potentially hundreds. And each offspring would be capable of infecting a new host and eventually reproducing itself. The room fell silent except for the innocent sounds of Lyralay playing with her toys. She was completely unaware of how close she had come to becoming patient zero in a biological catastrophe. "Dr. Kim, we need to meet immediately," Ambassador Theron said. "Can you bring your research data to the diplomatic quarters?" "Already on my way," she replied. "And Marcus, bring Professor Zhang. We're going to need all the dimensional physics expertise we can get." 20 minutes later, Dr. Kim and Professor Zhang arrived with a secure data case and grim expressions. They set up a holographic projector in Ambassador Theron's conference room, while Lyralay continued playing in the adjacent living area, supervised by a Zenthari cultural attaché. "Show us what you've discovered," Ambassador Theron said as they gathered around the projector. Dr. Kim activated the device, and a three-dimensional model of the extracted parasite appeared in the air above the table. "This is what we pulled out of Lyralay. At first glance, it appears to be a single organism, but when we analyzed its internal structure, we found something horrifying. The holographic model rotated, revealing a complex internal chamber filled with smaller versions of the creature. The parent organism was designed to mature inside a host for approximately 30 days before releasing its offspring. Lyralay had been infected for about 28 days when we extracted it." 2 days, Marcus whispered. "We almost missed it by 2 days. Professor Zhang stepped forward. "The dimensional phasing ability isn't just for hiding from medical scans. When the offspring are released, they can phase shift through solid matter to seek new hosts. Traditional quarantine procedures would be useless against them." "How would they find new hosts?" Ambassador Theron asked. "They appear to be attracted to specific bioelectric signatures produced by Zenthari nervous systems," Dr. Kim explained. "Particularly the developing nervous systems of children." Marcus studied the holographic model. "This level of sophistication doesn't happen by accident. Someone with advanced knowledge of Zenthari biology and dimensional physics engineered these things." "Our thoughts exactly," Ambassador Theron said grimly, "which is why the High Council's invitation has become even more urgent. We need to investigate this on Zephyria immediately." "What's the situation there?" Marcus asked. Ambassador Theron activated his own datapad, showing a map of Zenthari space. "Over the past 6 months, there have been reports from 17 different worlds of Zenthari children developing mysterious hearing problems. In every case, medical scans found no physical abnormalities." 17 worlds, Professor Zhang said, his face pale. "If each infected child was carrying a breeding parasite, we could be looking at thousands of these creatures being released simultaneously across Zenthari space," Dr. Kim finished. Marcus felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just about helping one child anymore. It was about preventing what could be the destruction of an entire species. "There's something else," Ambassador Theron said, his voice heavy. "The timing of these infections coincides with increased tensions between the Zenthari and the Orcs collective. Some members of the High Council believe this biological attack might be connected to our ongoing trade disputes." "The Orcs?" Marcus had worked around the insect-like species for 2 years, and while they were often cold and calculating, he had never seen evidence of outright hostility. "Not necessarily the Orcs government," Ambassador Theron clarified. "But there are radical factions within their society that believe the galaxy would be better off without soft species like the Zenthari. They see our empathic abilities and peaceful nature as weakness." Dr. Kim closed the holographic display. "Regardless of who's responsible, we need to act fast. If these parasites are released on multiple worlds simultaneously, the resulting epidemic could cripple Zenthari society." "What do you need from me?" Marcus asked, though he already knew what his answer would be. "Come with us to Zephyria," Ambassador Theron said. "Help us track down these parasites before they can reproduce. Your pattern recognition skills and your experience with unconventional threats could be the key to solving this crisis." Marcus looked through the doorway at Lyralay. who was carefully stacking blocks while listening to the different sounds each one made when it fell. The pure joy on her face as she experienced hearing for the first time made his decision easy. "When do we leave?" he asked. Ambassador Theron smiled for the first time since Dr. Kim had called with the disturbing news. "The Xanthari diplomatic ship Harmony's Voice departs tomorrow morning. The journey to Zephyria will take 3 days. I'll need to pack light and arrange for extended leave," Marcus said, mentally cataloging what he would need for an investigation on an alien world. "Actually," Ambassador Theron said, "the High Council has already made arrangements. You'll be provided with everything you need, including specialized equipment designed for detecting dimensional anomalies." Professor Zhang looked up from his datapad. "I've been monitoring the contained parasites, and their reproduction rate is accelerating. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it quickly." "How quickly?" Dr. Kim asked. "Based on current growth patterns, if even one of these creatures escapes containment and finds a host, we could see exponential spread within weeks." Marcus stood up, his prosthetic leg clicking against the floor. "Then we'd better make sure that doesn't happen." As they discussed the logistics of the mission, Lyrelei wandered over to Marcus and tugged on his sleeve. She had learned to modulate her voice over the past few days, and her words were becoming clearer. "Marcus," she said, "are you going somewhere? Papa looks worried." Marcus knelt down so he was at her eye level. "I'm going to help your papa with some work, but I'll make sure you're safe." Lyrelei studied his face with those intelligent purple eyes. "Is it because of the bad thing that was in my ear?" The adults exchanged surprised glances. They had tried to keep the details of the situation from her, but Xanthari children were known for their perceptual abilities. "Something like that," Marcus said honestly. "But you don't need to worry about it. The grown-ups are going to take care of everything." Lyrelei nodded solemnly, then surprised Marcus by giving him a hug. "Thank you for making me able to hear. Now I can help Papa with important work too." As Marcus hugged her back, he realized that this investigation wasn't just about preventing a biological catastrophe. It was about ensuring that children like Lyrelei would grow up in a galaxy where they didn't have to fear invisible threats designed to destroy their future. "Dr. Kim," Marcus said as they prepared to leave, "what happens to the parasites you have contained?" "Professor Zhang and I will continue studying them while you're gone. We're hoping to develop a detection method that can identify them even when they're in phase shift mode." "And if they escape containment?" Dr. Kim's expression was grim. "Then we'll have a sample outbreak to deal with right here on the station. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." As the group began to disperse to make final preparations for the journey to Zephyria, Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility that he remembered from his military days. But this time, it wasn't about winning a battle or completing a mission. It was about protecting the innocent from a threat they couldn't even see coming. Ambassador Theron walked Marcus to the door. "There's one more thing you should know. The High Council has classified this entire situation at the highest security level. If word gets out about the parasites before we can deal with the threat, it could cause panic across multiple star systems." "Understood," Marcus replied. "What's our cover story for the trip?" "You're being honored as a diplomatic friend of the Xanthari people for your assistance with my daughter. As far as anyone knows, this is a ceremonial visit to receive recognition from the High Council." Marcus nodded, appreciating the simple elegance of the cover story. "And the real investigation will be conducted by a small team of trusted individuals. You, myself, 2 High Council security specialists, and Dr. Varen, Zephyria's leading expert on dimensional biology." As Marcus returned to his quarters to pack for the most important mission of his life, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time in a game whose rules they didn't fully understand. The parasites were clearly the work of an intelligence that understood both Xanthari physiology and advanced dimensional physics. Finding and stopping whoever was responsible would require all the skills he had learned as a soldier and everything he had discovered about himself since leaving the military. But as he packed his few belongings, Marcus thought about Lyra Lee's smile when she heard her first sounds, and he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead on Zephyria, he would face them with the same determination that had gotten him through the war. The galaxy was a dangerous place, but it was also filled with beings worth protecting. And sometimes, it took a human to remind everyone else of that simple truth. That night, as Marcus tried to sleep before the journey, he received one final message from Dr. Kim. The parasites in containment had begun exhibiting new behavior. They were attempting to synchronize their reproduction cycles, as if receiving instructions from an external source. Someone was still controlling these creatures, even after they had been extracted from their host. And tomorrow, Marcus would begin the hunt for whoever was responsible for turning children into weapons in a war they didn't even know was being fought. The Zenthari homeworld of Zephyria was breathtaking in a way that made Marcus understand why his species called it the Jewel of the Inner Rim. From the viewing deck of the diplomatic transport Harmony's Voice, he watched as they approached a world of floating crystal cities connected by streams of pure energy. The planet's surface shimmered with bioluminescent forests that pulsed in rhythm with the planet's natural electromagnetic field. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Ambassador Theron said, joining Marcus at the viewport. Lyra Lee stood between them, her face pressed against the transparent aluminum as she listened to the ship's engines, and marveled at the complexity of sounds she had never experienced before. "It's incredible," Marcus admitted. "I can see why your people became diplomats and artists rather than warriors. Beauty can make one forget that even paradise has shadows," Ambassador Theron replied, his tone growing serious. "And right now, those shadows are deeper than they appear." The 3 days of travel had been productive. Marcus had spent hours studying Zenthari biology, dimensional physics, and the political situation surrounding the mysterious infections. What he had learned was troubling. The parasites weren't just targeting random children, they were specifically affecting the offspring of influential families, government officials, and cultural leaders. "Papa," Lyra Lee said, turning away from the viewport, "will there be other children like me on Zephyria?" Ambassador Theron exchanged a meaningful look with Marcus before answering. "There might be, little star. That's part of why we're here." As their ship descended toward the capital city of Resonance, Marcus was struck by the organic architecture of Zenthari civilization. The buildings seemed to grow from the planet's surface like living crystal formations, and transportation flowed through the city in rivers of controlled energy rather than traditional vehicles. "The High Council is eager to meet with you," Ambassador Theron said as they prepared to disembark. "But first, we're going to visit the Harmony Medical Institute. Dr. Varen has been analyzing the data we sent ahead, and she believes she's identified patterns in the infections." The Medical Institute was a marvel of biotechnology, with walls that seemed to pulse with their own inner light and diagnostic equipment that resembled works of art more than machinery. Dr. Varen, a tall Zenthari with the deep purple skin that marked her as an elder, greeted them in a laboratory filled with holographic displays showing complex genetic structures. "Ambassador Theron, you must be Marcus Chen," she said, her voice carrying the musical undertones that all elderly Zenthari developed. "Your analysis of the parasite was remarkably insightful for someone without formal xenobiological training." "Thank you," Marcus replied. "What have you discovered?" Dr. Varen activated a large holographic display showing a map of Zenthari space. "The infections follow a very specific pattern. Look at this." Red dots appeared on the map, marking the locations of infected children. At first glance, they seemed random, but as Dr. Varen adjusted the display parameters, a clear pattern emerged. The infections are concentrated around strategic government installations, major trade routes, and cultural centers, Marcus observed. Someone is targeting the infrastructure of Zenthari society. Precisely. But more than that, the timing of the infections suggests coordination. Each child was infected within a 72-hour period 6 months ago, despite being on different worlds separated by weeks of travel time. Ambassador Theron frowned. That level of coordination would require significant resources and inside knowledge of Zenthari society, or access to faster-than-light communication technology that we don't know about, Marcus added, his military instincts kicking in. In the war, we sometimes dealt with enemies who could coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. Dr. Varen nodded approvingly. Your military experience is indeed valuable. We've also discovered something else troubling. The parasites weren't just designed to reproduce. They were designed to collect data. She manipulated the display to show a microscopic view of one of the contained parasites. Each creature has organic memory storage capability. They've been recording everything their hosts experienced: conversations, locations, daily routines, even emotional states. They're not just weapons, Marcus said grimly. They're surveillance devices. Exactly. Someone has been using infected Zenthari children to gather intelligence on our most sensitive government and cultural operations. Lyralai, who had been quietly exploring the laboratory, suddenly tugged on her father's sleeve. Papa, the machines are making strange sounds, not normal sounds, hidden sounds. The adults turned to look at her. Zenthari children were known for their developing psychic abilities, but Lyralai's recent acquisition of hearing had apparently enhanced her perceptual capabilities beyond normal ranges. What do you mean, a little star? Ambassador Theron asked. Lyralai pointed to several pieces of equipment around the laboratory. They're all making the same hidden sound, like the bad thing that was in my ear, but very quiet. Dr. Varen's expression shifted to alarm. You're saying the laboratory equipment is producing dimensional resonance frequencies? If she can hear them, Marcus said, then something in this lab is either infected with parasites or communicating with them. Dr. Varen immediately activated emergency protocols, sealing the laboratory and beginning a full quantum scan of every piece of equipment. As the scanners swept through the room, Marcus noticed Lyralai growing more agitated. The sounds are getting louder, she said, covering her ears. They're angry sounds. There, Dr. Varen announced, pointing to a containment unit in the far corner of the lab. That storage container is showing dimensional phase activity. Marcus approached the container cautiously. What's supposed to be in there? Tissue samples from the infected children we've been treating, Dr. Varen replied, her voice filled with growing horror. We thought they were clean samples, but if they contain parasites... The container suddenly began to vibrate violently, and cracks appeared in its transparent surface. Whatever was inside was trying to break free. Everyone back, Marcus ordered, falling into his old military command voice. Dr. Varen, do you have any dimensional anchoring equipment here? Not powerful enough for this, she replied. The parasites are working together to phase shift through the containment. Lyralai suddenly stepped forward, despite her father's attempt to hold her back. I can hear what they're saying. What do you mean? Marcus asked. The hidden sounds. They're like words. They're calling to something big. Before anyone could stop her, Lyralai placed her small hand on the vibrating container. The moment she made contact, her eyes went wide and began to glow with the same silver light that Marcus had seen in her tapping patterns. Lyralai! Ambassador Theron cried, reaching for his daughter. Wait, Marcus said, grabbing the ambassador's arm. Look at the container. The violent shaking had stopped. The parasites inside were no longer trying to escape. Instead, they seemed to be responding to Lyralai's presence. They're not angry anymore, Lyrelai said, her voice distant and strange. They're scared. They don't want to hurt people. Someone is making them do bad things. Dr. Varen stared in amazement at the readings on her instruments. The parasite's dimensional phase activity has stabilized. It's as if she's communicating with them. That's impossible, Ambassador Theron said. The parasites are mindless biological weapons. No, Papa, Lyrelai said, still touching the container. They're babies. Someone took them from their real home and changed them to be weapons. They want to go back to where they belong. Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Dr. Varen, what do you know about the dimensional physics of these creatures? They exist partially in what we call phase space, a dimensional layer that overlaps with normal reality. It's theoretically possible that they originate from a realm that exists entirely in that space. And if someone kidnapped creatures from that realm and modified them to survive in our dimension, they would be forced to follow the commands of whoever controls the dimensional anchor technology that keeps them stable in our reality, Dr. Varen finished. Lyrelai removed her hand from the container, and her eyes returned to normal. They showed me pictures. There's a place with big machines where other babies like them are being hurt. And there's a person there who doesn't look like any of us. What did this person look like? Marcus asked gently. Tall and thin, with skin like metal and eyes that glow red. It talks to the babies through the machines and makes them do things they don't want to do. Ambassador Theron and Dr. Varen exchanged troubled glances. That description doesn't match any known species in this sector, Ambassador Theron said. Which means we're dealing with someone from outside Galactic Council space, Marcus concluded. Someone with technology we don't understand, and no obligation to follow our laws or treaties. Dr. Varen began working frantically at her computers. If Lyrelai can communicate with the parasites, we might be able to trace the signal back to their controller. Is that safe? Ambassador Theron asked, clearly worried about his daughter. I'll be careful, Papa, Lyrelai said, with the wisdom of a child who had already endured more than most adults. The babies trust me now. They know I want to help them go home. Marcus watched as Dr. Varen prepared a modified quantum resonance chamber. The plan was to use Lyrelai's unique connection to the parasites to trace the dimensional anchor signal back to its source. It was dangerous, unprecedented, and completely outside any standard protocol, exactly the kind of plan that Marcus had learned to trust during the war. As they prepared for the trace, Ambassador Theron received an urgent message on his communicator. His face went pale as he read it. What is it? Marcus asked. Reports are coming in from across Zenthari space. Children who were infected with the parasites are starting to exhibit new symptoms. They're speaking in voices that aren't their own, and they're all saying the same thing. What are they saying? Dr. Varen asked. The harvest begins at the next resonance cycle. According to our astronomical data, that's in less than 18 hours. Marcus felt his blood run cold. A harvest of what? Unknown. But if all the infected children are being controlled simultaneously, it suggests the parasites have reached their final programming phase. Lyrelai stepped into the resonance chamber, her small frame dwarfed by the sophisticated equipment. I can hear them calling to each other now. They're all connected like a big family. But they're scared because the metal person is making them get ready for something bad. Can you tell what they're supposed to do? Marcus asked. Lyrelai closed her eyes and concentrated. After a moment, she opened them with tears streaming down her face. They're supposed to make all the Zenthari children go to sleep forever. Then the metal person will come and take our worlds. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. This wasn't just a terrorist attack or a weapon test. It was the preliminary phase of an invasion. Someone was using interdimensional parasites to eliminate the next generation of Zenthari before moving in to claim their territory. Dr. Varen, we need that trace now, Marcus said urgently. and we need to find a way to break the connection between the controller and the parasites before the harvest begins. As the equipment hummed to life around Lorelei, Marcus realized that everything they had accomplished so far had been leading to this moment. A human veteran, an alien diplomat, and a brave young girl who could hear interdimensional creatures were about to attempt something that had never been tried before, tracking an unknown enemy across dimensional space to prevent the genocide of an entire species. The resonance chamber filled with harmonic frequencies that made Marcus's teeth ache. But Lorelei stood calmly in the center, her eyes glowing silver as she reached out through dimensions to touch the minds of creatures that shouldn't exist in their universe. "I can see the place," she whispered. "It's cold and full of machines. The metal person is there with many others like it. They're not from our reality. They're from the space between spaces." Dr. Varen monitored the readings as dimensional coordinates flowed across her displays. "I'm getting a location lock. That's impossible." "What?" Ambassador Theron asked. "The signal is coming from inside the Shattered Zone, the region of space where reality itself was damaged during the dimensional wars 3 centuries ago. Nothing is supposed to be able to survive in that area." Marcus remembered stories from his military training about the Shattered Zone, a region where the fabric of space-time had been so badly damaged that normal physics no longer applied. It was considered a cosmic graveyard, uninhabitable and unreachable. "Unless you're beings that exist outside normal dimensional space," Marcus said grimly, "then the Shattered Zone would be perfect territory." Lorelei suddenly cried out in pain and collapsed to her knees. The resonance chamber immediately shut down as Dr. Varen rushed to her side. "What happened?" Ambassador Theron demanded, cradling his daughter. "The metal person saw me," Lorelei whispered. "It knows we found them. It's moving the harvest time closer." "How much closer?" Dr. Varen asked. Lorelei's eyes were still glowing faintly silver. 6 hours. All the babies are getting new orders. They're supposed to activate at the same time all across Zenthari space. Marcus stood up, his mind racing through possibilities. "We have 6 hours to reach the Shattered Zone, find these creatures, and shut down their operation before they activate every parasite simultaneously." "That's impossible," Ambassador Theron said. "Even if we had a ship capable of reaching the Shattered Zone, we don't have technology that could function in that environment." "Actually," Dr. Varen said thoughtfully, "there might be a way. The Zenthari Council of Sciences has been developing experimental dimensional shielding technology. It's never been tested in the Shattered Zone, but theoretically it could protect a small ship long enough to reach the source of the signal." Marcus felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. "Then we're going. Dr. Varen, how quickly can you prepare the shielding technology?" 2 hours, maybe less, if I bypass all the safety protocols." "Do it. Ambassador, we'll need your fastest ship and clearance to enter the Shattered Zone." "And what makes you think we can succeed where centuries of military expeditions have failed?" Ambassador Theron asked. Marcus looked down at Lorelei, who was recovering from her psychic connection, but still maintaining contact with the parasites. "Because we have something no one else has ever had, a way to communicate with the enemy's weapons and turn them against their creators." As they prepared for what would likely be a suicide mission into the most dangerous region of known space, Marcus couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. He had lost his leg fighting in humanity's wars, only to find his greatest battle waiting for him in the effort to save an alien species he had barely known existed a week ago. But as he watched Lorelei bravely face the terrifying connection to creatures from another dimension, Marcus knew that some fights were worth any risk. The galaxy was full of wonders and beauty, and sometimes it took a human to remind everyone that those things were worth defending, no matter the cost. The hunt for truth had led them to the edge of known reality. Now they would venture beyond it, carrying nothing but hope, determination, and the unshakable belief that even the darkest corners of the universe could not stand against beings who refused to abandon the innocent. In 6 hours, the harvest would begin unless they succeeded in the impossible. Marcus checked his equipment one last time and prepared for the most important battle of his life, not for territory or resources, but for the right of children to grow up in a universe where interdimensional monsters didn't steal their futures. As the experimental ship prepared for departure, Lyrelay took Marcus's hand and squeezed it gently. "The babies are ready to help us," she said quietly. "They want to go home, and they want their real families back." Marcus squeezed her hand in return and made a silent promise that whatever happened in the Shattered Zone, he would make sure both the parasites and the children they had infected would have the chance to live the lives they were meant to live. The final phase of their hunt was about to begin.